Hi Year 10, today we're going to look at how to write an article as part of your Language Paper 2 exam. First of all, we're just going to revise the word jovial. Now we looked at the word jovial in reference to Fezziwig from Stave 2 of A Christmas Carol. So I'd like you to think back, how is Fezziwig presented as jovial? And why is his character important? What lesson is he teaching Scrooge? Our new word today is majestic, which unfortunately the slide doesn't seem to have, so I'll tell you what majestic means. If something is majestic, then it is very sort of beautiful, almost sort of otherworldly, really. So you might describe nature as majestic, for example. You know, if we refer to something that is majestic as something that is sort of, I don't know, something that is beautiful or powerful, something that causes sort of great admiration and respect. So you might refer to a king or a queen as majestic. You might also refer to nature as majestic. So think back to the prelude. Now that was a poem we looked at last term. It was the one by William Wordsworth about the little boy ice skating. And how does Wordsworth present nature as majestic, as sort of awe-inspiring or something that you would admire? So if you can just pause the video and answer those two questions, please. So jovial means jolly, happy, good-natured, and Fezziwig is jovial because he is always jolly, he's laughing, smiling, he has a positive sort of attitude to everybody around him, and we see this by him opening his home up to everybody at Christmas. The lesson that he teaches Scrooge here, the reason why he's important, is that he's reminding Scrooge about the power and responsibility that comes with being an employer, and that he, as Scrooge says himself to the ghost of Christmas past, he has the power to make us unhappy or happy. You know, he has the power to make our lives happy or miserable. And Scrooge looks at Fezziwig and wishes he could have a word with Bob, and he begins to realise how he has mistreated and abused his power, which of course we see change by the end of the book. So Wordsworth presents nature as majestic in two ways. Firstly, by showing the little boys the delight and admiration of this sort of winter weather, ice skating on the lake. But remember, from line 15 of that poem, those last few lines, the poem zooms out to the sort of these quite awe-inspiring, quite sinister cliffs, which are sort of this little valley is nestled in between. And the way he describes nature is a lot more awe-inspiring and sort of majestic and magnificent, with these towering, huge sort of cliff edges and mountains. And remember, we talked about that sort of zooming out and that change of perspective of nature from a little boy to an adult, a bit like Death of a Naturalist, with the little boy that collects frog spawn, and by the end of the poem his attitude has changed because he's grown up, he's lost that innocence. So by sort of presenting nature as majestic, Wordsworth is showing that, again, our attitudes of the world around us and the way we perceive the world around us changes as we grow up and lose that innocence. So today we are going to be focusing on planning and then preparing to write on Thursday's lesson an effective article. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply your knowledge of how to structure an article to a practice question, which you will do on Thursday. Today we're just going to focus on how to write an article, revise the information we learned in our live lesson on Monday. We're also going to revise the De Forest techniques and thinking about how to structure your article. So this is the example of the question that you're going to be answering in tomorrow's lesson. A travel magazine has asked for articles about places that offer a good day out. Write an article for the magazine about a place of your choice. You could choose one of the following: a town or city, a place in the countryside, or a place at the seaside. So this question is asking you to write a magazine article for a travel magazine, and you are having to recommend a good place for people to visit or a good day out. So what is an article then? Let's think about what an article means in terms of this language exam, in terms of what you will be asked to write. So an article is a piece of writing included in either a newspaper or a magazine. It is not the headline news, so not, you know, the sort of thing you would get reported on the news, but often a discussion on a topical issue with a particular point of view. So it's more likely something you would find in a magazine as opposed to a report on something that has happened in a typical newspaper. An article is written to either inform, persuade, or entertain the reader. So inform is simply giving you information. Persuading is trying to convince you to sort of change your mind about something or think a certain way. And entertaining is obviously to sort of amuse you and interest you. Here we have an example, teen drinking, a parent's guide. So this would be informative, for example, giving, you know, parents information on how to deal with the inevitable fact that their teenager will at some point start drinking alcohol and you know, how to deal with that as a parent. So that would be an informative magazine article. Now, your article in the exam will always be for a teenage magazine. So you will be aiming at people your own age. This doesn't mean, however, you have to start writing in slang or sort of text message speak or whatever. You always write in standard, regular sort of English, because this is, after all, an English exam. You never use sort of slang or abbreviations or anything like that. But you know that your target audience in terms of your day out is teenagers. Obviously, it is important for you to hold an opinion. You're asking to write your opinion on what is a good day out, but you also have to try and, you know, convince and persuade your reader about why it's such a good place to go. Why is it such a good day out? You have to, again, like when we looked at planning your letter, you have to select what you want to say carefully. If you were going to do London, you wouldn't be able to write everything there is that's interesting about London. You'd have to really pick sort of 3 things that are the most interesting or exciting about that place. So here's just the question again. The model that we're going to look at today has chosen Bournemouth as the place they're going to write about. You could choose wherever you want for yours. It could be, you know, Rye or Hastings or Ashford or London or somewhere else, you know, that you've been. It doesn't have to be, it would be sensible if it was a real place, but if you make up details, remember that's okay as well. As long as they're sensible, you can make it up. It doesn't necessarily have to be the truth. So what I'd like you to do is just spend, it doesn't have to necessarily be 90 seconds, but just try and have in your head a place that you are going to write your article about. If it was me, I might do Brighton, for example. I love Brighton for lots of reasons, namely the lanes. So I like to walk past and weep at all the beautiful clothes sort of in the lanes that I would quite like to buy if I didn't have lots of other things to spend my money on, like 2 children, for example. So I might be sitting here and thinking, oh, okay, Brighton, I can think of, you know, 3 really good reasons why Brighton is such a fantastic place to visit. It's helpful if it's somewhere that you know something about. So just pause the video and give yourself a moment to just have a think about what place are you going to write about in your article. The next thing that I'd like you to do is think, what are 3 good things about your choice? So if I've picked Brighton, what are my 3 good things? Well, okay, firstly, the shops. And actually, it doesn't really matter what your sort of preferred dress style is. Brighton has, you know, a big shopping centre and sort of typical high street stores, but equally Brighton, you know, is quite bohemian. It's got lots of really sort of interesting independent shops, you know, with vintage, secondhand clothes, you know, stuff that's sort of a little bit more offbeat in its fashion. And that would be one place, one reason why I might say to go there. Another reason might be the sort of seaside and the sort of the pier and the fair and sort of everything to see there. I might also talk, my third reason could be it's got that big sea life centre I've taken my children to there. I could, considering it's at teenagers are probably less likely to want to go to the sea life centre, so I might talk about it's got some really good venues for live music, it's got really good theatres. One of the last trips that I did before the first lockdown was take some year 10, last year's year 11 and some of the current year 11 to go see an Inspector Calls in Brighton, which was a really happy memory considering the year 11s then sort of disappeared after that. So there's got some lovely, you know, things to do. They've got great restaurants, great cafes, loads of different sort of cultures and sort of world cuisine. So these could all be reasons that I could include about why Brighton is such a good day out. So again, pause the video and give yourself some time to think about the place you've selected and then just literally write down 3 things, 3 reasons why it is a good place to visit. Now, the model we're going to look at today has picked 3 things: the beaches of Bournemouth, the fact that they have an air festival, and the oceanarium, which is like a, you know, giant aquarium, basically. So these are the 3 things they've picked. Now, with an article, unlike a formal letter, which has lots of things to remember really about how to structure it, you know, the address, the formal greeting, the formal ending, etc. The good thing about an article is that actually all you really need to remember is give it a catchy heading. Not necessarily a headline because it's not the news, but if you flick through a magazine, you always see that any articles have these sort of catchy headings. Normally there would be pictures as well, but as this is an English exam, we do not need to draw pictures or anything like that. But you do need to think about having a heading. We then have an introduction, 3, 4 if you have time, but 3 central paragraphs, and then a short conclusion. Now, I said in our live lesson on Monday that it doesn't matter whether it's a letter, article, speech, you write 5 paragraphs. Introduction, 3 main points, conclusion. And we do that same thing here with an article as well. So what we have here then is a title. And this is the model that we've got. The intro, the first main point, the second main point, and the third main point. Now, this model has sort of subheadings for each of the 3 paragraphs. You don't have to worry about that, okay? But we can see here we've got our catchy title, our introduction, our sort of summary of why Bournemouth is such a great place. There are 3 main points that they're making, so mine might be shopping, pier, food, and then that sort of final conclusion. So again, your article will look something like this when you write it tomorrow. So we can see here they've got their catchy title, intro, 3 main reasons, and then their ending. This is their plan. And you should have a similar plan for yours. So try and see if you can come up with a title, okay, a sort of heading for your article. You might use alliteration. So I might say beautiful bohemian Brighton could be my title, for example. I'm using alliteration. Sometimes you can use puns, so a play on words, but don't worry too much about that. Generally, alliteration is the easiest thing to use in a title to make it catchy. So again, alliteration is one of the De Forest techniques. So want a great day out? Visit Bournemouth today is their title. Not the probably most sophisticated in the world, but it does its job. So I could say, want a great day out, visit Brighton today. So if you're stuck coming up with your own sort of catchy title, use this one, just substitute Bournemouth for wherever you are writing about. Beautiful Bournemouth, for example. So again, pause the video and just spend a moment creating your own title, but use the one in the blue box. Just change Bournemouth for wherever your place is if you're stuck. Now again, on Monday, we had a quick look at the DeForest techniques. Just like you practiced using them in your letter on Tuesday, you need to make sure your article is using those DeForest techniques as well. And you've got attached to your Teams group, your Teams assignment, a model, okay? And in a minute, I'm going to be asking you to pick out those DeForest techniques in that model. Here are some examples. I'm not going to read through all of them for you, but these are examples of the DeForest techniques that this person has planned to use in their answer. You don't necessarily have to do this now. You can do it tomorrow. I'll leave that completely up to you, but you can pause the video now to try and come up with some DeForest techniques of your own, or you can sort of make these up as you're writing your article tomorrow. So it all depends on how much planning you want to do. So here we can see that they know where they're going to fit in these DeForest techniques to their plan. So just having a look then, this is the model that in a minute I'm going to ask you to have a go at identifying the DeForest techniques in. But what we can see here is some different sentence varieties. We have a sentence in the introduction, which should look familiar to you from the letter model. Let's get straight to the point, : you need to visit Bournemouth today. So you may choose to use a sentence like this using a colon. Let's get straight to the point. You need to visit Brighton today, I could include. What we have in green here is our longer, more complex sentences. And in blue, we have short sentences. Now, particularly if you're aiming for the high grades, sort of 7s and above, we eventually need to be building to the point where you're using different sentence lengths and different sentence structures for deliberate effect. We're not going to worry too much about that now unless you're quite confident in your writing. But as you read through the model in a minute to find the DeForest techniques, do pay a little bit of attention to the length of sentences and the way they've mixed that up. So some top tips for tomorrow. Use the correct structure. So start with your headline, have your introduction, 3 main points and conclusion. Use as many of the DeForest techniques as you can. Create a catchy headline. Use some interesting sentence starters if you can. Try not to just start every sentence with I or the. Try and vary the length of your sentences. Try and use some interesting vocabulary or describing words such as adjectives. Check basic spelling, punctuation and grammar. Things like, are you using the right there? And make sure that you're not all writing in one big paragraph. Make sure you've got that 5-paragraph structure. So the last thing I'd like you to do now that we've come to the end of the lesson is look at that model, that Word document that's attached to your team's assignment. Read through, and much like we did in the live lesson, highlight the different DeForest techniques. Because what you must do when you write your article in tomorrow's lesson is not only have that heading and 5-paragraph structure, you need to be trying to use as many of those DeForest techniques as you can. And you can use the model that you're about to read and highlight to help you in your answer. As always, if you need any help, do please email your class teacher. Okay, so I will leave you there and I will see you next lesson.